Okay, student ministries, working with students, campus ministries, call it whatever you want, is the job that we do in order to reach out to students, either the ones that, because we have students in our congregations, or because we're passionate about the students that are out there. Now, the question I have, and Nathan is going to help us click on, please. Is this an important job, working with students? Is it or is it not? According to last year's statistics by the Department of Business, Innovation and Skills, 49% of young people in England entered higher education. Rough numbers, 50% entered higher education, 50% haven't. Pastor Stickland mentioned about that. In total in England, 342,000 students entered higher education for the first time last year. Okay, that's 350,000 people entered higher education last year. Of those, 55% were females, 45% were males. In the UK, 2.5 million students currently enrolled. 2.5 million students currently enrolled. Most of them at non-Adventist institutions. How many Adventist institutions do we have in Britain? How many? That's pretty much one, am I right? So that means most of our, vast majority of our students, Seventh-day Adventist young men and women, are enrolled at non-Adventist institutions. Okay? There is a mission to have, to perform out there to help our young people at least. Now, in general, college students are not likely to respond to Revelation seminars. Do we agree with that? Okay? But surely there are means of reaching out to students. Something very elaborate, such as food, friendship. If my experience is anything to go by, whenever there is food, there are students. I remember I studied in South Africa, as it happens, at Helderberg College, and I remember distinctly, and I still thank my father-in-law and my mother-in-law, because they've adopted me from the very moment that I asked to go out with their daughter. I don't think I skipped any supper at their house for the 4 years, except the 2 weeks when I was not allowed to see their daughter. But other than that, I think I married her because of the food that her mother gave me or something like that. Wherever there is food, there will be students. It's a wonderful ministry. Now, today I would like us to see if we have time to concentrate on two aspects, not yet there, and that is helping the local congregation and actually working with the students themselves. Because the important reality is students are people in transition. Students are young men and young women who have left the safe haven of home and have gone somewhere in Netherlands, and there they are finding themselves. It is a time and an age when they seek to achieve independence and maturity. They make friends, they develop skills, they form values, and that is when they have to reshape their belief in God. Okay? Up to that point in time, by and large, faith is borrowed. Up to the age when you go to university, you pretty much act out and believe those things that you've borrowed from your friends, from your parents especially. But when you come to about 18, 19, 20, then you start to make decisions for yourself. That is when you start asking questions. And I believe there is a ministry to be had in order to help our young people to own their faith. But without you and me over there, I think they are going to struggle. Many of our young people leave God completely. Some of them leave the Adventist faith while they are at university. Why, do you ask? Here are some possibilities. The influence of skeptical friends and professors. Do you know anybody? Yes? Okay. As they try to escape from the reality or the perception of self-centered legalistic religion. Any names come to mind? Unchecked social and emotional immaturity that leads them to destructive behaviors. The natural process of differentiating themselves from their parents and become their own man, their own woman, and a lack of support from, very often, even the local church. Some of these are valid reasons for which our young people leave the faith, leave God completely during their student years. So is there a need for student ministry? Is there a need for campus ministry? I believe it is very important because it's a great need. So, let's deal with the local church first. Meeting students' needs at the local church. Okay? I believe that the local church needs to be involved. And I have to say at this point in time that I've learned a lot during this week preparing for this. And I'm indebted to Pastor Thomas, who provided you and me with materials in order to wrap our heads around this. We have learned as pastors a couple of things from experience, but this seems to be logical and organized, so it is definitely good to work with this. So, local church. What can a local church do in order to reach out to students? No, this is your time. What can a local church do to reach out to students? Ideas, shout it out. Somebody was listening. Or somebody ate the food. All right, food. Anything else? Friendship. Anything else? Financial support. Especially in England. That's what happens when you don't study in Scotland, you see. Anything else? Hey, I got to plug Scotland. You still get a chance before we vote, and then you'll need a visa. All right. Anything else to support students at a local church? Let's start with food, please, because food is the first one, okay? Inviting students home for lunch. How difficult is that? Okay? Provide food for Friday evening fellowships, which is otherwise known as Vespers, that's right. Schedule regular potluck lunches. Familiar with the term? Yes? Fellowship lunch, potluck lunch. I remember going to my church for the first time, and I asked, I come from that tradition in South Africa, potluck lunch. And they said, no, only once a month. I said, why? What's wrong? I said, no, it's too much work. Very few people bring food. And I said, what happens to the rest of us? Like, no, everybody goes home. So, and the other Sabbaths. And like, no, it's too much. It's unpredictable, too much work. So I said, well, I would like us to have potluck every week. And they said, no, you can't. So I said, why can't I? I said, well, you may be the pastor, but you can't. So I said, okay, will you stop me from eating my food at church? So they say, no, we can't. So I said, would you stop me from saying to other people that I'm going to eat my food at church? They're welcome to bring theirs. I said, no, we can't do that. So there you go, we got potluck every week. And ever since, we haven't stopped. And I still have people coming up to me and saying, oh, some people don't bring pasta. You know how difficult it is to manage. It's like, come on, get it out of your brains. These students are struggling every single day. 1 meal a week is cooked food. And it's like heaven on earth. Please, food, potluck is a big Adventist core belief. It's one of the 29, somewhere out there. Okay? International student meals. Give them an opportunity to come and share their tradition and that. Major events, Christmas, Easter, whatever is out there. Use the opportunity to have food. Actually, I read somewhere that most of Jesus' work happened around food. There's got to be something in it. So food is definitely important. Let's go to number 2, love. Okay, I believe we can show love to our students. What stops us from providing a welcoming atmosphere in our church? Check out who the students are and invite them to church and the other events that you have. Provide a safe place for them to stay in contact with, okay? Accept them uncritically. I just said that they're going through transition at that point in time. If they come up with weird and wonderful ideas, just bear with them, okay? We've all been there. Well, some of us sinners have been there, you know. Just make room for us, all right? Make friends, spend quality time. I actually liked it on the campus of Heidelberg College before I got there. They stopped it after I got there. I have no idea if I had anything to do with it. Every faculty member adopted a student. Now, what's wrong with every church member adopting a student? Wouldn't that work? Wouldn't that make a difference? Make the changes required in your schedule, in the church's schedule, in order to love the students. Pray for them, pray with them, preach, teach, and leave grace at every single step. That's step 2. Step 3, involve them. There is nothing like participation. There is nothing like giving somebody responsibility and having them own a piece of their church. Okay? What are their gifts? What are their passions? Do they care about this work? What have they done in the past? I remember going to university, as I said, at Heidelberg College, and every pastor had to do a practical experience in one of the local churches. First year in one church, second year in another church, and so it went. So they allocated me to this tiny little church, and it turns out the Sabbath school teacher and the youth leader, which are the same person, were going overseas. Hey, small church, didn't I say? They were going overseas. I said, Marcel, now you must understand, when I went there, really I struggled with English. I still do, but in those days all I knew was mother, father, chair, table, that kind of a thing. Said, what have you done when you were young? So I said, well, I sang. None of us sings. Okay, so there goes that one. And he said, I taught Sabbath school. There you go, we got the youth leader. It's like, no, wrong conclusion. But because there was something that I did once, I was stupid enough to do it once, okay? They said, that's you. And I tell you, for the next 4 years, actually 5 years, because I stayed another year after my studies, all I did was youth ministry. And it was wonderful in that church. I didn't want to be moved to other churches. I said, no, I'd do it again here. And I did third year here and fourth year, and after I finished, I said, would you still have me? And they said, yes, please. Because they played to my previous experience, and I was involved. And I'm still an Adventist because of that. Next one, invest. Okay? Somebody said, money is the tail that wags the dog. I say it differently. Money follows worthy causes. I believe when you have something that is important to you, money will not be an object. Do you agree with me? If you are passionate and if you care about something, God will provide. And I don't say that as a cliche. I say it from experience. Make financial provisions for a ministry to the students. Next point, challenge them. Just because we get them the way they come to us as students, it doesn't mean we've got to leave them the same way. We got to push them. We got to stretch them. We got to throw them in the deep. Have a little buoy over there just in case they're drowning, okay? But they got to be stretched. Challenge the young people. Give them adult responsibilities. I think it's a sin when you have a student training to become a lawyer or a doctor or any other professional, and all you can give him is the opportunity to collect the tithes and the offerings on a Sabbath morning. Crying shame. Crying shame. These are people who will graduate in a year or two's time, and you and I are going to pay them megabucks to do whatever service for us. And all we can give them is crumbs that fall off the table of those of us established. Okay? Commit. Okay? Commit to these to the students, to the chaplain ministry or student ministry, whatever you want to call it. Okay? Another point that I'd like to make is students are the culture. One of the great dilemmas faced by the local church is how to be relevant to the local culture. If you walk in most Adventist churches today, it is like going back in time 30, 40 years as far as the general culture is concerned. Am I right? You find an ethnic church and it is as though we're going back 6 decades. How do I know that? It's because I come from Romania. Okay? And we are by default 3-4 decades back. You've got to edit that out, okay? Now, it is amazing that I go overseas and I attend Romanian churches and they still dress the same and they still talk the same and they still do the same things that they did before I was even born. And he's like, how is that possible? And you get a young student coming into your church who is rubbing shoulders with the local culture, and they come to church and they all of a sudden enter this bubble. And like, no, there's something that's not right. I believe we've got to give some freedom to our students to experiment, to be themselves, and actually to change the rest of us. Believe you me, it's not going to be a crime. They're not going to be silly things. How do I know? Well, I got experience with that too. I run youth retreats. I run the youth work in Scotland. And to my horror, now I can organize a retreat fairly okay. I've done it for 12 years. You'd expect me to do it right. So I can put the program all together, but I don't do that. Every year I give a different church the responsibility of drawing up the program. All I tell them was the speaker has to speak 5 times. The rest is all yours. And you know what they come up with? A stricter program than I could ever have conceived. Actually, if I were to tell them that they have to have a pajama devotional at 7:30 in the morning, they would shoot me. But I give them carte blanche to come up with whatever they want. They come up with a program that you and I and our parents and grandparents will be very happy with and pleased with. Our students have a lot of common sense. We just have to trust them. I picked this thing from the manual that you have. Develop an environment in the church where the older generation can learn style from students. There is that word that was used in the sermon. While the students learn the substance of their faith from their elders. Did you get that? An environment where the older generation learns style from students, while the student learns substance of their faith from the elders. So there are a couple of pointers over there that the local church, I think, will be well served to observe. Okay? Now, let's move to the campus. Starting a ministry on a public college or university campus. It cannot start without, we can move on, thank you, without the first step that is up there. And that's going to come up, and that is prayer. You cannot start any ministry, especially one that relates to young people, without proper and serious and earnest prayer. We're not doing business over here. We're fighting for people's souls. We are aligning ourselves with what God is already doing in people's lives and in various places in this world. You cannot do it without connecting with the one that is already at work. Number 2, develop a ministry plan. You've got to know where you're going. You've got to know what direction you have. So here are a couple of questions that may help us, Pastor Stickland, please, that may help us identify this plan. Who is it that you're trying to reach if you have a student ministry? How are you going to do that? What's your strategy? As I said earlier on, some of the traditional Adventist outreach methods are not going to fly. Okay, you got to rethink. Number 3, what do we want to say to them? What is it that we're selling? Next, who are we going to partner with? Is it the local church? Is it the local union? Is it people on campus? Next will be, how are we going to evaluate success? In other words, how can you tell whether it worked or not? And lastly, what will sustain this ministry over time? Because there are a lot of ministries that start up and then they die down the next year, if you're lucky to last a year. That's okay. It's good to experiment. But you got to know where you're going and how you evaluate it. Okay? There's a question that I would like to ask, and that is, what type of group, what type of ministry are you trying to create? Do you want to create a fellowship of Adventist students on a campus? Or do you just want to reach everybody and lead them to the Lord Jesus? Because there are 2 different approaches. First one targets our own students. In other words, hunt out the Adventists, okay? Bring them all into the fold and make sure nobody escapes, okay? The next one is shotgun. Whoever comes to Jesus, to the Lord Jesus, His name be praised, okay? 2 different approaches. Which one is the one that we're actually aiming for? If you go for the first one, your aim, your task is to preserve. It's to preserve the Adventist faith for our young people, okay? Evangelism will normally grow out of friendship if you go down that road. If you go down the other road, and that is reach everybody or anybody that would like to have a relationship with the Lord Jesus, then we got a different route to take. That is when you start to cooperate with other groups like Youth for Christ, Scripture Union, and so on. I actually was surprised by the work that some of these organizations do on campuses. Some of our young people were involved from Scotland, were involved with some of them. Some question their faith, and they come from strong Adventist backgrounds. They were challenged in their faith, and they resolved at the end of it, unfortunately for now, that the Adventist faith is not for them. However, they are committed Christians. And the major complaint they had against the Adventist faith was exactly the one that Pastor Stickland addressed this morning. We are so navel-gazing, so concerned with our beliefs and our message, that we are of no earthly use to anybody. Their major complaint was, we are so heavenly minded that we are of no earthly use. All we do is preaching and teaching and all of that, but no involvement in the government. I'm trying to say, well, don't ditch the boat. Come on, there is still hope. There are those of us, you know. I said, no. It's fundamental. We have other young people who are involved with Scripture Union. They nearly left the church. And yet something from their past had them hang on to. Now, I believe there are a lot of people that do a lot of good out there. If we are reaching every Christian that is out, or every person, reaching them for Christ, I think that's another way of doing. But it will impact whatever decisions we make next. Okay? The next point, it's the leadership structure that is out there. I believe that it is important to know who's in charge of what if you do that. It is essential, Pastor Stickland, if you don't mind, to have a campus minister. In other words, who is your main leader? It can be a pastor, it can be a part-time person, it can be a volunteer, but you need to know who is in charge. Okay? They are that's the person that holds the team together. Then you would have student leaders, and that is where you can involve all the other folk that are part of it. You have student advisors. Some campuses allow you to have a faculty member on your team. Other leaders on campus, if you would like to involve other leaders from other Christian faiths as well. And definitely you can involve the local church. I suggest you do involve the local church, otherwise you're in trouble. Okay, if we can move on. Let's recap. What was the first step? Thank you. That was prayer. Next one. What was it? Ministry plan. That's right. Thank you. Number 3. The type. You got to decide where you're going. Okay. Number 4. Leadership structure. That's absolutely right. Next, I would say to you, please seek counsel. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just as I discovered this week, there are others who have gone down this road before. It is good to pick their brains. Then we're going to affiliating with other existing organizations. And this is something that at union level we have been talking about for quite a while. There's a name over there, Adventist Christian Fellowship. It functions in America in particular. And a lot of our, am I right? A lot of our campus ministries are signing up, are chartering up with them. It is a major organization. We've been talking about starting a database of our students, working with our pastors. We struggle to launch that kind of a thing, but I think there is a momentum that is building up, which perhaps will help us go on. I mentioned other campus ministry leaders that will provide you with a lot of resources, but if you rub shoulders with them, actually it builds up your credibility as an organization at the same time. If you're affiliated with those that are recognized on campus, then people are going to say, well, we don't know you, but we trust you, because, you know, they wouldn't be friends with you otherwise. Okay? Local church membership is very important. Talk to the local church. Most local churches should be willing to be involved in campus ministry. But if you come there, if you come to me as a pastor, take me as an example. Here you are on fire for God, come to my church, and you attend the local university, and you walk up to me and you say, Pastor, why don't we have a campus ministry? What are you doing? What is this church doing? Why don't you go out there and do campus ministry? I'm going to say, hold your horses now. First I have to have an Adventist Muslim relations person designated, and then we go, because that's the order in which presented, okay? So take a number, get in line, all right? On the other hand, if you have a well thought out plan, you've got some ideas, you've got some people that can be involved, and you come along and say, Pastor, would your church be interested in working side by side with us? I think it sounds better too. And it kind of gets me off my defense and says, yes, let me hear what your passion is. And then we'll be able to work together. Whatever you do, I suggest you approach the local church and be kind to them, okay? We mean well most of the times. We pastors and local churches, we're not that mean, all right? But be nice to us. Give us space and time and some ideas so we don't like, oh, what does that mean, okay? Next, study the campus, okay? Check it out. Learn as much as possible about the campus, because not all campuses are the same. They're all different. Look at their website. What are their priorities? What departments are the strongest departments? Walk around. Actually, ask the local students to give you a guided tour of their campus. Okay? Where are the buildings, the main buildings? Learn about the population. Check out the campus. Scout the land. Okay? Meet with the administration. Have a word with the people in charge. Tell them who you are. Tell them what you're planning to do. Okay? And seek their advice from there. Locate and connect with students. Who are the Adventist students on the campus that you're targeting? Are there any Adventist students? How do you know if there are any Adventist students here in the UK? All right? Well, there are a couple of places you can go looking. I actually don't think I have it there. When students apply, they normally ask the question to identify their religious affiliation. Now you can go, if you're a recognized group, you can go to the admin office and you can ask them, are there any Seventh-day Adventist students on campus? And they will be able to point you into the right direction. Secondly, visit that all-important local church. Okay? And ask them, do you know of any local Seventh-day Adventist students that are attending this particular university? They ought to know, they better know. Okay? Then contact the local union or conference office. Pastor Thomas for you here in the South England. You'll have Pastor Adam Ramden up in the north. You got Pastor Nathan Stickland at the union. Speak to us. We might have ideas. Local pastors are also a very important source of information. For example, when I have young people leaving Scotland, definitely when they leave my church and they tell me they're going to that particular church, I try to make a point to phone the local pastor and say, look, one of my own is coming to you. You better keep an eye out. You better look out for them. And vice versa. Other pastors pick up the phone and say, Marcel, look out for this name. Look out for this person. They're very good. They're gifted in this. They're gifted in that. And we as pastors are a very good point of contact at the local church. Okay? Now, there are also online options, not yet available to us, but as I said, we are working on that as an institution. BUC is working on that. So let's we've gone back there. All right, that's a recap of everything we talked about in terms of campus ministry so far. But I would like us to start organizing. 3 important words. I'm going to shout them at you. Shoot quick. Play. Whenever you meet with students, you got to have an icebreaker. You got to help them relax. That's number 1. Number 2, pray. Okay? Don't ever have a student meeting without prayer. Number 3, plan. When you are together, when you sit together, it's a good chance to just think about things and what is it that you do. Now, anybody here that is actually interested in campus ministry or student ministry? Slight interest. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we got this. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Just in case you might think, oh boy, there's so much to do. I say, think about one brand name, and that's Nike. Do you know why I say that?
Just do it.
Thank you. Now, I suggest you go through all the steps, tick all the boxes, and do all of that eventually. But don't let any of this talk or any of this discussion stop you and saying, well, man, I got all of... No, perhaps I leave it for next year. You know, it's good to know all of these things. It's good to be aware. It's good to have the theory. But don't let this prevent you from starting a student ministry, okay? Just work on both fronts at the same time, right? Important points to keep in mind as far as organization is concerned. check out the local university's policy regarding religious groups. Okay? It's important to work with people rather than against people. Okay? Secondly, find a faculty sponsor. There are Seventh-day Adventist professors and lecturers scattered at all universities around the country. You're blessed if you have one in your town, in your university. If you do, that's your first port of call. Ask them, can we work together? If not, there are other committed Christians who are willing and able to work side by side with you. If you find somebody like that, you're fortunate. Number 3, you've got to know what you're about. Mission statements. You heard that from business studies as well. Then you need to have a constitution, just so that you know what's the right thing to do and what's not the right thing to do. Okay? Apply to the local college and say to them, look, this is who we are. Don't skip that step. They got to know that you exist. Okay? As a pastor, I introduce myself to the chaplain of the local institution. And we know each other. Okay? I'm the local Seventh-day Adventist pastor. In case I miss anybody and he hears that they are Seventh-day Adventists, then he can say, well, have you met the local church and the local pastor? There's his email address, there's his mobile phone number. Okay? So be official, as it were. Designate campus leaders. Charter with other organizations. I said about registering. You've got to know what you're planning to do. Calendar of event and budget. We talked about budget at the end, but calendar of events, you've got to know what's coming up. Now, I don't know if your students are anything like my students, but my students, they seem to have a secret pact that they've made, whereby they do not know what they want to attend until the very last minute. So even though I say, set up a calendar of events, I say, don't be discouraged if nobody attends until Friday morning. Okay? But you need to know what you're planning to do, because you still have to book the venue. You still have to invite the speakers and all of that stuff. Besides, what are we going to fill the announcement slots in church with if we don't know what we're doing next? Okay? So you've got to have a good calendar of event in terms of knowing what's cooking. The last one, money. Budget. I told you earlier, money follows worthy causes, but you still need to know where to look for those money that follows you, okay? Campuses have money allocated for some of these things. Alumni. Check if there are any Adventist students who graduated, now are professionals, earning the good money, okay? And ask them, we are looking at launching a student ministry on your alma mater, on your campus. Would you be willing to subsidize? Okay? Don't ignore the alumni, okay? Local church again, and local conference or union. We are normally very generous, aren't we, when it comes to these things. If you guys come to us, then we'll be very happy to support. Admin number 2, organization of programs. Okay? You've got to know what the needs are. Nathan, please, if you don't mind. You've got to know what the needs of your group are. Okay? What is the scarcest resource that they have? Some mention money. If money is what it is, that will dictate some of the programs that you do. If they are really struggling with food, then that will dictate. You will have many more socials than any other group out there. Okay? Whatever, just sit down and look at the needs. Brainstorm. You know all about brainstorming. No idea is dumb until proven otherwise. But anyway, accept them all for the beginning. Okay? Create variety. Have a balanced set of events that you run. Whatever you do, evaluate regularly. Give it a chance to fly. If it flies, good. If it doesn't, then say like we normally do. It was a very good idea, just badly timed. All right? And plan ahead for big events. I cannot emphasize this. Our students are training to be professionals. They know a good thing when they see one, and they know a sloppy thing when they see one. And you would not want to be associated with a sloppily organized event, would you? Why should the church always come last in those things? Plan big, go for it, and organize it very well. In terms of, did I hear cheers? Yeah? Organize well? Yeah. You're all in favor of that? Just checking. Okay. All right. In terms of weekly programs, I would like to suggest group meetings For example, Friday evening. Most students, before they went to university, were at home with their parents and the rest of the family on a Friday evening. Is that right? Sabbath comes in and they're all alone. Friday evenings are very important for students. Okay? However, when it comes to Friday evenings, that is when I bump into what I talked to you earlier on this morning. If you decide to have a Bible study, can I encourage you? Can I plead with you to do it being mindful of the people that you have in your group? Because we can put people of God and put people of religion all together if we do Bible study in the wrong way. Especially if we're looking at this other approach. So not only maintaining our students, but actually going for everybody. If they come into your Bible study and you start talking about, well, the sanctuary doctrine, according to Leviticus 23, they're already, you've lost them by the first word, okay? They're gone. We've got to be very mindful about our jargon, our language, whatever we say. Okay? Some of us may be very well versed in some of those doctrines and good. Okay? But there are others who come along and you've got no idea where your students are coming from. Even if they say they are Adventists, some of them may just be recently baptized. Okay? Be tolerant, be kind, be easy when it comes to Friday evening meetings. It's very important. And food. Feed the people, feed the students, always. If you can't afford it, ask church members to donate. There is always a granny in the church who has a secret recipe, either for a soup or for cookies or God knows for pasta or something or another. She's longing for an opportunity to share her secret recipe in practice with somebody or another. And students long for a chance to lick their fingers eating somebody else's food. Okay? And that's okay. It's the easiest thing we can do. So don't skip food. Okay, Sabbath school. Is another thing that we need to keep in terms of weekly occurrences. My suggestion is you get a good number of students in your church. They deserve an independent Sabbath school. Don't lump them up with the adults. Okay, give them a chance to explore and to think and to lead and all of that. Small groups. Okay, they are very important, similar in a way to Friday evenings, but they don't have to happen on a Friday night. And lastly, service projects. I believe if you want to maintain today's students, to keep them in church, you've got to give them something practical to do out there for people. It's one of the strengths of the postmodern generation. They care. And they care by default. We older ones need to be reminded that we need to care, kind of thing. They care first and then they start thinking. If a group exists for its own benefit, I think we're going to lose some of our students. All right? Social events, obviously very important for anything. So that's what do you guys like to do out here in London? Let's think. You got sun. So anything that involves the sun, I suppose, will be acceptable. You can go swimming and see, there in Scotland, we are kind of prevented by some of the weather that we have. And then you run into the other problem. But at the ice skating rink, the music was too loud. It's like, oh, come on, get a life, you know. And, no, but social activity, what you going to do with them when it's pouring with rain, you know, every day of the week? We got to go indoors. So where indoors? In church, yeah, duh. Social activities, but use your imagination. I remember actually from my student days, that's how I got to meet her. Okay? It was Saturday evening. You think Friday evening is lonely? Try Saturday evening. And I was alone. Lonely. All on my own. Recently arrived on campus, couldn't speak English properly. Lonely. And Richard came along to me. He's like, another lonely young man, just older than me. So, and he comes and Marcel, what you going to do this Saturday evening? So he's like, I'm going to go to my room and be alone. So he's like, do you want to go to Claudette's house? So I said, who's that? One of the students on campus. What does she do? He's like, no. Every Saturday evening, the foreign students go down the hill to her house. And I said, what they do? I said, I don't know. They eat, they watch movies, and they play games, and they talk. So I said, let's go. And we've been married for 17 years. So she fed me, and she played games with me. That says something. For students, time together is amazingly important. Take them away from campus if you can, just so they disconnect and detach. It doesn't take much to have a good time. It really doesn't take much. Other weekly activities that you may consider if you're involved in this: set up an interest table. Have a presence on campus. All you need is a business card printed, a couple of freebies, and you've already got an audience over there. And then a second point that we'd like to mention is one-on-one discipleship. That is where you who are involved in student ministries will get a chance to sit down with the students. Now, as a pastor, I don't normally visit students in their homes, okay? What I like to do, and I set aside a budget in my own finances, and what I like to do is give the girl or give the guy a phone call and say, do you care for lunch? And that already disperses all the smoke screens they could ever think of, okay? That already breaks down any barrier. And when I say lunch is on me, I'm sold. They sold. I got the date, okay? So we're going out there and we're visiting. And we sit down and we can talk about everything that is on their hearts, okay? One-on-one. As a local church pastor, I was saying to my wife, there are so many things we've got to do in order to, to do your job. But there's something that happens when I take time to go out there and visit with people. Even my preaching is better when I can sit down and be with real people and not only in my study with my imaginary audience. Now that's just general stuff. Now when you are there with a student and they realize they're busy, they know that you're busy, and they know that you took time out to be one-on-one with them, I think that says something. Yeah? So one-on-one is very important for you. And probably we're heading right for the end right now. Annual meetings. I suggest that you have annual retreats. Okay? It's a very good, very important opportunity to sit down and to study. We, for example, in Scotland, every October, we wait for the new students to come, and every October we got a spiritual retreat with the students in mind. Some of the younger ones are welcome to come, but the students are our primary target because they need to know that they're part of a larger church. Okay? And the last, second to last point over there is really my area of passion, and that is mission trips. You all know what that is? I would argue, okay, you can challenge me. I would argue that there is no other event that we can put on as a church which has a better and a bigger impact on the spirituality of one of our young people than a mission trip does. I have seen lives changed. Whether you go on a short-term mission trip, whether you go on a long-term mission trip, I suggest to all our churches to get on board with that because the time is already passing. Okay? Mission trips. Go out there and dedicate 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, 10 months to something, to a cause, to something worthy. It changes lives. And then do look at evangelistic programs. Okay? That's the last point on there. Do look for something, a means of outreach. But don't try to impose it. Let the students tell you what it is that they think is going to work and run with that.